Rep. Delia Ramirez didn't hold back. She confronted Kristi Noem head-on, accusing her of corruption, power abuse, and violating the Constitution. It was raw accountability, bold, blistering, and undeniably overdue.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, it's good to see you. I'm going to go straight to the questions because I have a lot of them. Let me start just following up with Congressman Goldman about judiciary. Do you agree that the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land? Yes or no, Secretary?
We are
Yes.
abiding by all federal judges' orders, absolutely.
So yes, it's a co-equal branch of government. Okay, well, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Do you agree that Congress is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor legislation and appropriations duly authorized by Congress? Yes or no?
Yes, that's why I'm
Thank you.
thrilled to work.
Well, let
for
me
a
ask you the
president that is
follow-up question
enforcing
here
the
because I
laws.
have a lot of them. Do you agree that Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse? Yes or no?
Yes, it is a
And
duty
do you
of
believe
Congress
that,
to be
let me
able
ask
to
you another
appropriate
follow-up, it's
funds.
just yes or no. Do you believe you have the power to disregard congressional appropriations and
decades after
unilaterally
joining the
repurpose
LPGA
funds
tour,
that have been
GI
duly
Shin is still
appropriated by
proving why she
Congress?
remains one of the
Yes
most
or
reliable
no?
and respected
Ma'am, we are
players
not
in
doing
women's
that.
So
golf.
the
We are
answer to
using
you is
dollars
no.
as to
All
how
right,
they
well,
were
it was a
appropriated
yes or
for
no,
ensuring that
Secretary. Let me
programs have been
continue.
The 66-time
Interestingly, you said
worldwide
no.
champion delivered
But since
yet
you've been
another reminder that
Secretary,
her game
you
and her
have
competitive
repeatedly
fire are very
disregarded
much
the law.
alive.
You have illegally
posted a
impounded
sharp
funds that Congress
666,
appropriated
finishing
and that
only one
your
shot
branch of
behind
government
co-leaders Nasa
must
Hatauka and
implement
Yu
pursuant to
Yamashita,
the law.
immediately
Yet
placing herself in
you've closed
contention. After
offices
the round,
established in
Shin
law,
revealed the key
including
change
the
that boosted
Office for
her
Civil
confidence.
Rights and Civil
She
Liberties,
switched back
the
to her old
Office
Scotty
of the
Cameron
Immigration
putter, a
Detention
trusted club she
Ombudsman,
recently
the
returned
Office
to.
of the Citizenship
The
and
impact
Immigration
showed quickly.
Services, and you've canceled contracts for programs authorized in
par
law,
5 16,
including
she rolled in
shelter
a
and
smooth
service programs
six-footer for
and
birdie,
citizenship
briefly
and
joining the
integration
lead and
grants.
drawing loud cheers from
You've
Japanese
obstructed
fans who
and
have
roughed
followed
up
her
members
career
of
for
this
years.
committee
But
as they
golf has a
attempted to
way of
conduct
reminding you
congressional
who's in
oversight,
charge.
and then you
On the par
vilified
4
them.
17th,
But my question
an
is, if they were
aggressive
so
birdie try
bad,
ran
why were
long,
they
and the
allowed to
comeback
go
putt
in
missed,
after to conduct
resulting in a
oversight?
bogey
Let
that
me just
cost her a
continue.
share of
You
the lead.
redirected
Still,
funds to
her
terrorize our
overall performance
communities.
was rock
You
solid.
created
10 of 14 fairways,
taxpayer-funded
15 of
political
18 greens in
propaganda
regulation,
campaigns
just
to
26
terrorize
putts say
families
complete.
and children who
Confident
don't
stock.
sleep
I
at
brought
night
back my
because of
old
the terror of
Scotty
those
this week.
commercials
And
that
it
you
worked
are
today,
putting out
Shin
there.
said with a grin.
You hold
I want
sick,
to stay close with my old
disrespectful
friend.
press
Japan also
conferences
carries
in my
personal meaning
state
for
where,
her,
let me be
though
clear,
she left
you
full-time
are
LPGA
not
membership
welcome.
in 2014.
You corruptly
She has
used
thrived
emergency
on the
authority
JLPGA,
to avoid
collecting 31
procurement to make
wins,
Trump's private
including
prison
one
donors
earlier
richer
this year.
by directing
Nearing 40, she
$45
remains
billion
committed and driven. I
for them
still
to
want
expand
win.
ICE detention
That's why
centers.
I keep
You
pushing,
defunded
she
work
said,
to address real
noting
threats
her
to the
hard work,
homeland,
physical
all while you
changes, and
pursued
desire to inspire
college
younger
newspaper
players. Away from the
editors,
course,
labor
Shin is
leaders,
known for her singing
and even a
talent and has
Harvard
released multiple
scientist who
Christian
failed to
albums.
declare
She even
frog
shared
embryos
that
at
she
the
will be
airport.
singing at So
Clearly,
Young Yu's
we
wedding
don't have
next
time
month.
for all my
A role
questions,
she's
so I
excited to
have
prepare for
13
with
pages worth
3
of
rounds
questions
left at the
that I will be
Toto Japan
submitting
Classic,
to the record
Fortuna.
that I expect
She
you
has
and the
already won 3
administration to
times.
answer.
Shin
But
has
here
a
is my
real
final
chance
question
to
to you.
chase her 32nd JLPGA
When you took your
title
oath,
and her first
did you
LPGA
swear to
victory
support
since
and defend the
2013.
Constitution
And
of
if
the
today
United
is any
States of
sign,
America?
that
Yes or no?
comeback
Yes,
might
I
be
did.
closer than ever.
So I find that laughable. You don't behave like someone who takes that oath seriously. And let me tell you why. We don't live in a dictatorship or a monarchy. Trump's will is not the guiding doctrine of this nation, and our country is not a playground for his or your twisted authoritarian fantasies. We are a democracy. We defend the Constitution and we affirm the rule of law. We respect the co-equal branches of government and we uphold our rights, even when we disagree. The foundation of our nation is based on a core set of constitutional rights upon which our prosperity, our pluralism, and our peace depend on it. You, however, have been leading this work for 116 days, and in that time, you have profiled and dehumanized our neighbors. You've betrayed our constitutional commitment to due process. You've deported United States citizens. You've undermined the courts. You've broken the law. You've engaged in corruption, and you've weaponized the immigration system to violate civil rights. As Senator Murphy perfectly stated, your department is out of control. But you're responsible. You have betrayed the sacred fundamentals of your oath. And I believe to my core that you are not fit to hold the office. And I again, to your face, demand your immediate resignation, and I put it and place it on the record for all of us to see. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Generally yields.
When Representative Delia Ramirez took the microphone during that hearing, it wasn't just another political exchange. It was a seismic moment of truth in a chamber too often drowned in scripted talking points and partisan theatrics. This was no performance. This was confrontation with purpose. Ramirez came armed not with empty sound bites, but with moral clarity. And what she delivered wasn't politics as usual. It was a blistering, necessary reality check. In her direct questioning of Governor Kristi Noem, Ramirez pierced through the smog of spin and exposed the deeper crisis at hand. The slow, corrosive collapse of constitutional order under the weight of unchecked executive arrogance. She didn't mince words. She didn't backpedal. Every question she asked drilled into the rot that's been festering under the surface. Leaders treating public office like personal inheritance, wielding fear as a weapon, and bending the Constitution for their own gain. And in locking eyes with Noem, Ramirez made something crystal clear. In a functioning democracy, no one stands above the law. Not a governor, not a Trump loyalist, not anyone. She opened her remarks by reminding us of something Americans too often take for granted. The foundational idea that the three branches of government exist not to protect each other, but to keep each other honest. That's the design. That's the firewall against authoritarianism. But in this new era of MAGA-style governance, that design is under siege. Leaders like Noem, who pledge allegiance to political strongmen over constitutional duty, operate with a stunning level of impunity, as if democratic norms are optional, as if checks and balances are just paper obstacles to bulldoze. Ramirez named it. She described a governor who disregards congressional intent, shutters civil rights offices, and diverts public funds from national priorities into propaganda machines. Not because it serves the people, but because it consolidates power. Because it silences dissent. Because it keeps her image clean while others suffer in the margins. This wasn't just a takedown of procedural misconduct, it was an indictment of moral decay. Ramirez painted a brutal picture. Tax dollars weaponized to target immigrant families, to intimidate vulnerable communities, to push fear-based narratives while enriching private prison donors. She called out not only the unethical, but the anti-democratic, a leadership style that cloaks abuse of power in patriotic language while gutting the very principles it claims to defend. When she said, "Trump's will is not the guiding doctrine of this nation," she wasn't just calling out Noem. She was sending a warning to every elected official who's forgotten the difference between loyalty to a man and loyalty to the Constitution. And that's what made her words land like a hammer. This wasn't grandstanding. This was someone using their platform to defend a civic promise. To remind America that the Constitution is more than parchment. It's a covenant, a sacred agreement that power must serve the people, not itself. Ramirez's tone shifted throughout, from surgical precision to unflinching moral urgency. She didn't just cite laws, she spoke of real families. People lying awake at night because of state-sponsored fear. Children growing up in communities treated like threats. Citizens profiled, dehumanized, dismissed. In her voice was the weight of that lived reality, and it hit harder than any policy memo ever could. By the time she called for Noem's resignation, it didn't feel like a partisan maneuver. It felt inevitable. It felt overdue. And here's the truth. Ramirez isn't demanding resignation to score political points. She's calling for restoration. Restoration of trust. Restoration of accountability. Restoration of a public service ethic. That's been suffocating under the boot of ambition. Because this isn't just about Kristi Noem. This is about every official who's normalized corruption behind the guise of law and order. Every leader who rewrites the rules to benefit their allies and punish their critics. Every government that tramples the people it's meant to serve. What's at stake here is not just a policy debate. It's the soul of the republic. Delia Ramirez's confrontation was a reminder that democracy doesn't sustain itself. It survives when people are willing to stand in rooms built for silence and speak the uncomfortable truths anyway. When they choose courage over caution, principle over popularity. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a moral reckoning. It was a line drawn in the sand between two visions of America. One rooted in democratic accountability, and one built on authoritarian obedience. So the question is no longer whether Kristi Noem should resign. The question is whether we, the people, will hold the line. Whether we'll demand the same moral clarity Ramirez showed in that hearing room. Whether we'll share these truths, speak them out loud, and refuse to be gaslit into apathy. Because the survival of democracy depends not on the power of institutions, but on the expectations of the people who watch them. And here at Carter TYT, we'll keep shining a light on these moments. We'll keep unpacking the spin and naming the stakes, not just to expose the rot, but to rebuild understanding. To show that civic courage still exists, and to remind you, every voice matters in this fight.